U.S. Special Envoy for Sudan, Tom Perello, welcome to النهار.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jeddah talks will be held soon, as I heard, and on the war in Sudan to negotiate a ceasefire. What should be the basis of such deal after more than a year of bloody conflict?
Well, I've met in person and virtually with thousands and thousands of Sudanese, both outside the country and virtually inside the country. And they could not be more clear that the number one priority needs to be immediately ending the violence and getting food and medicine to every corner of Sudan, where we see millions and millions of Sudanese suffering from famine or near famine conditions, from the spread of disease. And of course, we have the rainy season coming soon that will make all of this far more difficult to address. So an immediate cessation of violence with full humanitarian access, while we also support a full and inclusive political dialogue for the Sudanese people to define and determine their own future.
Do we have a tentative date for the talks, the Jeddah talks?
We do not have a formal date for the talks, but we are in talks every day. We are negotiating with both the fighting forces inside Sudan, as well as key external actors across Africa and across the Gulf region. We are meeting directly with Sudanese civilians. So every day is part of the negotiations because we feel urgent about stopping this war. But we do hope to see a commitment to the formal talks here very soon.
Tom, a lasting peace deal, you have said earlier, shouldn't be a way for former corrupt official or extremist elements to backdoor their way into power. How can this be achieved with those elements having the upper ground now on the country?
Well, I think they don't have the upper ground in the country. First and foremost, they don't have the support of the Sudanese people. You hear that very clearly, whether you talk to Sudanese from Khartoum or Port Sudan, from the Darfurs or the Kordofans. There's a strong consensus among the Sudanese people that they do not want to see a return of corrupt officials or extreme elements. We do need to see the two fighting forces come to the table. And quite frankly, within both sides, RSF and SAF, we see an increasing number of very negative elements trying to gain control. This is why we need a peace deal now, first and foremost, because we need to stop the killing of the Sudanese people, but also we need to ensure that that future for the Sudanese people is defined by the people themselves and not by those who are taking advantage of the fragility of Sudan today. So the good thing is the Sudanese people are very clear about wanting an inclusive democratic future and not wanting to continue to become attacked in this way by outside elements and extremists.
Will the civil society be a part of this negotiation?
Civil society is part of the negotiations every single day. We're really talking about a comprehensive peace and democracy plan for Sudan. And that comprehensive strategy has really come from the Sudanese people. And it will have different parts: cessation of violence talks, humanitarian access, political dialogue. And this overall framework, I believe, has been shaped by Sudan civil society. And that also needs to input and really set the framework for each of these pieces. So we see the terms of Jeddah already having been set by the Sudanese people in terms of this desire to end the violence, to get humanitarian access, and to protect the political decisions for the political dialogue to follow. And we will continue to try to be guided by Sudanese civil society, particularly young people who represent not just the majority of the Sudanese people today, but obviously represent its future.
But these young people that you are talking about that were also a part of the revolution, where they are now?
They're everywhere. I mean, the young people, many are still inside, stuck under horrific conditions. Many have had to flee, but they remain deeply engaged inside Sudan, saying that they are not going to concede their future to these negative elements. And we're all inspired by that and need to have that shape so much of the work we do.
In general, there is a sense that the Sudanese war is a forgotten front now, with the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. Who bears responsibility for this protracted suffering?
Well, first and foremost, the responsibility lies with the two fighting forces who decided to conduct a coup a few years ago together, and then to conduct a civil war against each other and a fight for power that really put all of the Sudanese people at risk. This is not a famine that was created by a tornado or by a drought. That's a human problem created by people inside Sudan. It is also true that the world has been unforgivably silent and slow in responding to the crisis in Sudan. We believe the United States has certainly been strong from the beginning in understanding the scale of this conflict and trying to end it. But we need allies from across the region and across the world who care about this. And I think the Sudanese people do still feel forgotten. Part of the message, though, that I've shared with Sudanese, particularly the women and children who've borne the brunt of the pain, is that their voices are being heard. I think in the last few months, you've seen a very different level of international engagement from the United Nations, from the African Union, the United States, and other actors. And I think that is because those voices are being heard, but so much more needs to be done.
Is the U.S. coordinating with the regional powers and organization in terms of Sudan ceasefire?
We are absolutely. I've been in touch regularly with our African Union and United Nations counterparts. My recent trip included stops in Egypt and Kenya, Uganda, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. We are in daily contact virtually. I just did a town hall with nearly 200 young people, Sudanese youth, both inside Sudan and outside Sudan. And so we are absolutely building a larger coalition of regional and global actors who are committed to the peace process. And we are hoping that that will produce results soon. But we understand that it is tragically late in the process, given the level of suffering. But we do believe a path to peace is possible. We do believe a path to the Sudan that the Sudanese people want is possible. And we are going to continue to be partners in that process.
There are also global players in Sudan. Moscow seems to be backing the two horses in the race. It has agreed to supply weapons to Sudan's state army in exchange for a base in the Red Sea, while continuing to supply its enemy via pro-Kremlin mercenaries. That's what the Times of London cited today. Meanwhile, Iran as well armed the Sudanese army with drones. How do you see this regional power playing in Sudan?
What the Sudanese people need from countries in the region and around the world is food and medicine. What the Sudanese people need from outside actors is pressure on the two sides to come to Jeddah and accept a peace deal. And our message is very clear to all of those who are standing on the side of fueling this war and instead of trying to stand on the side of the Sudanese people is those costs are going to go up. The United States is increasing the costs to those who are fueling the war. But also, we're in a situation now where everybody is going to lose. If we see Sudan look more like a failed state, or if we see a protracted civil war across multiple ethnic and tribal groups that's more likely to pull in the neighbors, we're talking about a country of 50 million people of enormous strategic importance in terms of the Red Sea, the resources. Everybody stands to lose from the current trajectory of this war. The RSF loses, the SAF loses, outside actors lose. But everybody can be partners in peace. And if you have a stable, democratic Sudan with civilian oversight of an integrated professional army, that's a situation in which the whole region and world can benefit. And now is the time for people to take sides. And that side has got to be the side of peace and the side of the Sudanese people and their right to determine their political future.
Are you aware of this deal with the Russians?
Sudan is a place right now where there are a lot of stories emerging, and the questions of which ones are true or not continues to be a work in progress. We certainly know that visits were had. There's been a long contestation of this question of both naval ports and port access in Sudan. And we see far too many countries seeing the suffering of the Sudanese people as an opportunity to try to take advantage of that, instead of to stand with the people and trying to end this war and end this humanitarian crisis. And I think that's something the Sudanese people will remember for a long time. So we encourage all of those countries in a position to be supporting the peace process, supporting the Sudanese people to do so. And we believe if we get that, we will have the political will to silence the guns and get stability for the people in the region.
My last question. United Nations has called the war in Sudan one of the worst humanitarian disasters in recent memory. Could this war trigger U.S. sending boots on the ground?
Well, we don't have plans right now that will involve boots on the ground, but I can tell you we are extremely seized with the idea that this is a crisis, first and foremost, of humanitarian suffering, both the famine and famine-like conditions, the horrific bombings from the air, the atrocities, rape, and torture of people, the ethnic cleansing that we have seen by the RSF. These are atrocities, and the world needs to respond. We also know this situation could get even worse as some of the factions start to split, as if al-Fashir were to fall, with the rainy season coming in. And so we do not have any time left for sides to be standing as barriers to peace. We need the army to commit to the peace talks. We need the RSF to move back from its positions in al-Fashir. There is a chance here for a peaceful outcome that can benefit the whole region, but that time is dwindling. And we need to be looking at much stronger diplomatic action across all of our multilateral institutions and all of our bilateral relationships in order to say enough is enough.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.